Hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows, and you can turn this to this. It's time for ToTape8. That's right. ToTape is getting an update real quick because I was able to make Dubly that much better. What you just heard, and I admit it sounded a little bit different, but that's because I was using ToTape as a creative tool on the individual tracks and on the mixdown. So what have we here? Well, we've got that ability for tape to make stuff squishy and interesting sounding. But how does that take place? Well, I can demonstrate using the earlier one. And then we're going to just turn ToTape on. Now this is not actually going to be putting the effect on the guitar in the same way because this is on the mixdown. But here is ToTape8. We've got input, tilt, shape, flutter, flutter speed, bias, head bump frequency, and output. So you can do this. And if that's all you want to do with it, knock yourself out. But you can do a lot more. One of the things I was doing with the mixdown was adjusting everything so that it scored high scores on the new version of my meter plugin, which I am revising and doing new things with, and that will be coming soon as well. I have to do all of the analyzing that I was doing over again because I made changes at the last minute. But this is ready to go. In fact, you can download it right now. It is a free open source plugin because I'm Patreon supported. Here are some of the things you can do. You might have seen the Dubly plugin, although not being the full ToTape. You might not have seen that one. If you want to see my videos, subscribe to the channel. Only the occasional plugin release like this one is going to really be a large amount of hype. Speaking of hype, remember the Dubly trick that we do? You can do that. This is a different sound from the previous one because rather than being as gritty and grainy as the previous Dubly had, this one actually does a kind of compression. So you're getting a smoother sound out of even such an exaggerated trick as this. Or the inverse, only applying the decode and not applying the encode. Setting it to 0.5 is balanced. In this case, you don't get to shut both of them off or boost both of them as far as you can go because it's designed to sound good at every setting. You can hear the way that the highs come in or out. You'll also notice this other thing called shape. Now, what might that be? Shape is the way that I got the guitar to do this striking thing. Let me shut it off for a moment. That chug was done through ToTape8 alone. Although I did do a special thing, which is I used a EQ out of the upcoming Console 8 to do some pre-ToTape sound sculpting on the guitar. But I didn't use Console X. But I didn't use Console X to do it with. I used a plugin called Parametric, which is basically about the same thing as the Parametric EQ in Console X. And you've already got that because I've released it. You might not have seen it because Parametric didn't get as much YouTube traffic as ToTape videos get, but it's there. You can go and find it in the EQ section of Consolidated or look it up in the large collection of plugins. And it does this. So, if we go to this, and we simply turn ToTape on, it starts sounding more tape-like and exciting, but we're not getting that effect. And that's because that's the shape control being boosted. Check this out. And isn't that interesting? Very different. And that is because shape is moving the frequencies of the doubly encode and decode against each other. It's capable of pushing the frequency of the encode all the way to the point that it's running full range, which, if you're curious, you can make that sound. That's what the maximum gain of the doubly can do. But then, if we subtract it, that means that the decode is running at full range and the encode is barely doing anything. And that's a really different sound. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily your idea of a good sound. Pushed this extreme, it's kind of weird sounding. But there are recordings out there that used the Raildale version of what I do as doubly. And you can lean things in that direction if that's the sound that you want. For instance, if you have a little bit less of this, well, that's interesting. That's a sort of boxy, warm 70s kind of sound going on. And you'll notice that it let high frequencies through a little bit more. Well, we can exaggerate that too using the tilt control. So we can really resculpt the sound from this to a interesting sort of transformation of that sound. Now bear in mind, we've also got all the other controls that the previous ToTape video might have shown you. Things like Flutter, Flutter speed, we've got our bias control. That still works the same. In fact, I'm pretty sure I was using some of that on the bass and the drums in the ToTape8 on every track version. You can squish the highs really hard this way. Or use it to just peak limit the brightness pretty much as you could possibly want. You can dial the brightness with this. For instance, if you're using Airwindows meter and all of your highs are poking out too much, this will just neatly put a top limit on how bright the brightness spikes can go. You can just cut them right off, and that happens even if you're using tilt to make stuff really bright. And then of course we have a head bump. And the head bump is going to give you the same behavior that you had in ToTape8, which is there's a bit of a notch there, and it's exactly an octave above where the head bump sits. And since you don't actually have a literal tape machine, dial it into what works for the song or the track. That's what I did. You don't have to slavishly imitate the head bump of a particular recording machine. If you want to, you can. But people often spend time fighting that with EQ or such anyhow. You can dial the head bump to 0, meaning that the extension is going to be all the way to digital bass. Or you can crank the head bump way up, in which case the extension will be the head bump. And lastly, we have output. Output has its own special thing going on, in that boosting into ToTape well, that's a tape style overdrive, but output can do another thing. Clip-only 2 lives inside this plugin, so if you boost the output and cut the input, you're having less of the tape overdrive while still running all this other stuff. But then you have a version of clip-only 2 as a safety clipper on the end. And if you want to only do the TapeDrv, well, you turn down output until you're only getting ToTape. As much of it as you want. And that is pretty much fully cranked, but we're not actually hitting the safety clipper on the end, which normally lives there because we've turned the output down. And that's turning the tape machine down, so you're only hearing the tape saturation without hearing any of the safety clipping. And you know, we can do that on other things as well. That's just a drum kit, but if you turn off the ToTape8, it's just the raw track. And of course, we can do the same things with tilt and shape that we did with the full band sound on just this drum track. So we'll turn it on, and we've got this. We can turn it way up, or we can do some of these tone control things. There's tilt, here's shape. And we can boost a little bit again. Take the flutter out. And if we want to get real exaggerated about it, we'll take tape down, shape down, add some tilt, and then use the bias control to essentially turn it into a giant sound effect. Under bias is really weird in ToTape8. So let's just turn it up more. We've made an electro drums out of it. And of course, we can make electro drums out of something else, like for instance, the track Alien Kittens. we can put it back. So here is what a techno sounding track sounds like going through ToTape versus not having it there. We'll turn it off. Listen to those hats there. Turn it on. It doesn't sound wildly different, but this is a tape effect on it now, meaning that we can boost highs or just boost the sound. We can adjust the mid-range or mellow it out more. Add a little bias. Drop the frequency right down so that it's just a subsonic thundering going on. Although to get that working properly, I have to pull head bump back to let digital bass through. And again, since output is an additional clipping stage going on afterwards, we can tidy it up a little bit by pulling output back and leaning only on the extreme amount of tape drive that I'm doing with this. And that's using ToTape8 as a sort of exaggerated compressor saturation effect that'll still sound nice. So there you have it. I mean, it's a bit of a long video, but then there's been a lot to show. And I hope you enjoy ToTape8. I can probably leave this alone for now, and I'd better, because I'm going to have to start going in and doing Console X, which of course the control over my shoulder, hang on. You can basically see over my shoulder the control surface I've talked about before. And I need to build that into a plugin system with all of those tone control parameters. And that's going to be a lot, but I'm kind of looking forward to it because I'm getting better and better sounds out of things, which is of course what I'm after. And I really enjoy the fact that people are coming on this journey with me. It would be just as interesting to do all by myself, but it's more fun when people are enjoying what they are doing with my stuff. So on that note, I hope you like ToTape8. I'm going to continue to post pieces of Console X as I continue to develop it. And you might just have a update on Airwindows meter, because as you might have seen in the last Checking In with Chris in a live stream, which was a brief hour or so on Wednesday, I've got some big improvements going on Airwindows meter, which is of course the Airwindows hit record meter. I'm learning how to measure some of that stuff that I've most enjoyed in the records I grew up on, and I'm learning where people went wrong in modern production. All the stuff that people do to squish things into the loudest, blandest possible package. Yeah, maybe don't want to do that. I'll show you how not to do that. But that's for another day. For now, talk to you later. Bye-bye.